This podcast is presented by the Prince George's County Memorial Library System.
Hi, I'm Hawa.
I'm Heather.
I'm Darlene.
And I'm Hannah.
And this is our podcast, These Books Made Me. Today, for our opening episode of Season 6, we're going to be talking about The Egypt Game by Zilpha Keatley Snyder. Friendly warning as always, this podcast contains spoilers. If you don't yet know who has a stuffed octopus named Security, proceed with caution.
So let's get into our first question. What did this book mean to you? And was this everyone's first time reading? If not, how did this reread compare to your memories of reading it when you were younger?
I hadn't even heard of this book until we were
hadn't
doing
either.
this. Which honestly, when I heard when it came out, it kind of made sense. Like 60s, I think?
Yeah.
68. Or
68?
67.
67,
one of
I
those years.
think.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
Yeah. But some things come back in pop culture. But I've never heard of this game until you guys put it on there. I was actually kind of sad about it because as I was reading it, I was like,
This
I
could
would
be
have
fun.
loved this as a kid.
I loved this as a kid.
No,
That was why I
genuinely.
asked to do it. Yeah, so I read it as a kid, obviously.
she's so cheesy right now. It's so cute.
She's got a big grin.
No, so this was a library book that I checked out when I was little. I loved it then. I identified so much with Melanie. She is very much the kind of kid I was. And I think just the friendship between April and Melanie, and then, the satellite kids that are part of that group. When I found my person when I was in 4th grade and I found my April, it clicked for me.
Mhm.
Like I was hoping to find somebody like that. And then when I did, and I found that person that really was on the same wavelength as me and did and lived in books the same way that I did, it was great. Like this book just really resonated for me. And it still does. Like I read it again, and, I read it when my kids were kids, and reading it again as an adult, I still think it's a gem, and it still really connects for me. When I was making my notes for the book, there were several times where I just copied down a phrase because I thought it was so incisive. She just really captures things sometimes really, really well, especially like hard to pinpoint things. I think she really does a great job of hanging words on it. So yeah, I love this book. I'm really glad that we're talking about it today.
Yeah.
Thanks for letting me bring this book back. Maybe we will make it a trend.
Right.
I don't know.
Let's make fetch happen.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Stop trying to make fetch happen. It's not going to happen.
Similarly to how I've never read this book. Yeah, when I was reading it, I mean, honestly, hearing Heather talk about it kind of legitimizes like kind of what I thought about it, which is like, I felt like if I read this as a kid, it would have resonated as someone that really had an overactive imagination. I don't know. I just found that like so nicely put in this book. Yeah, I felt seen in it, and I was like, so many years almost too late, but I still really enjoyed it. And yeah, I hope now I definitely have another book to like recommend to kids if they come in and have any questions about like a really fun, imaginative book.
So it turns out I never read the book. It was one of those books that like you see the name go by so many times that you're like, maybe I read it, maybe I didn't. So I never read this. It was a very engaging, fun read. I don't know where she learned to write. She just does amazing character studies of kids that pull you in immediately. Although it's focused on kids, you get like a wonderful sense of like even just the adults that kind of touch into parts of their lives. I thought it was very fun. I was reading the book and I was just kind of waiting. I was like, so is it going to be like humans that are moving the plot along only, or is there going to be supernatural stuff? So I was very excited to see what happened. And we'll get into the discussion, but I was like, is there going to be actual like stuff that's going to like come out of the altar at some point? I couldn't wait to see what was going to happen. It was a fun read.
11-year-old first stole-wearing, fake eyelash batting April Hall moves to a new California town to live with her grandmother while her glamorous, globe-trotting mother pursues an acting career. April is dramatic, a little rough around the edges, and desperately trying to not show she's a little lonely, until she meets Melanie Ross, a same-age neighbor who becomes her first real friend. Melanie is imaginative but shrewd and intuitive about people. When the two girls discover they both love all things ancient Egypt, a simple shared interest quickly turns into something much bigger, an elaborate imagination game. Behind the mysterious A to Z antique shop owned by the quiet and mysterious professor, the girls, and Melanie's 4-year-old brother Marshall, find a fenced-off storage yard filled with odds and ends. A bust of Nefertiti here, a statue of Diana there. To them, it becomes the perfect setting for their secret world. They transform the space into a make-believe temple, adopt Egyptian names, perform ceremonies, write messages in hieroglyphs, and even build their own altar. Soon, other kids from the neighborhood join in. Elizabeth, a 9-year-old new to the neighborhood girl, Toby, the 6th grade class clown, and Ken, the class jock. The Egypt game grows into a full-blown society with rituals, rules, and a deep sense of belonging. But their imaginative world develops a darker edge when the children learn that a child murderer, known locally as the Marsh Monster, has been haunting the neighborhood. Their attempts to play Oracle take a spooky turn when they receive an answer from the Oracle locating Marshall's lost stuffed octopus security. Suddenly, their secret temple doesn't feel quite so safe. Tension builds as the kids begin to wonder whether their pretend world might be connected to something very real and very dangerous. The mystery comes to a head when Marshall and April return to Egypt in the night to retrieve a book, and April is attacked in the temple yard. In the confusion of the attack, blame appears to fall on the professor. Marshall, who never thinks on anyone, finally tells the police that the professor was the one who saved the day, and the red-headed stock boy from the variety store was the culprit. The professor, lonely after the loss of his wife, had been watching over the children in his own weird way. By the end of the story, the children return to the temple, but the game has changed. What once felt like pure fantasy now carries the weight of real-world danger and understanding. They're still imaginative, still fascinated with Egypt, but they're also a little older and wiser, having learned that even the most magical games exist alongside the complicated realities of the adult world.
And so now a little bit about the author. Zilpha Keatley Snyder was born on May 11th, 1927 in Lemoore, California, to William S. and Dessa Jepson Keatley. Her parents worked as a rancher/oil driller and a school teacher, respectively. And the family lived in a country house for Zilpha's early years with plenty of farm animals running around. Snyder described herself as having an extremely active imagination and developed a habit of telling stories. She decided at the age of 8 that she was a writer and would, as an adult, live up to that self-declaration in a significant way. Reading was also a major part of Snyder's life. She was quoted as saying, "We lived in the country during the Depression and World War II. Due to shortages of such things as gasoline and money, I didn't get around much or do many exciting things. In fact, my world might have been quite narrow and uninteresting if it had not been for two magical ingredients, animals and books." Snyder went on to attend and graduate with a BA from Whittier College, where she met her husband, music student Larry Snyder. They married in 1950 and had 3 children. Snyder began work as a public elementary school teacher and would teach in multiple places around the United States as she followed her husband while he pursued graduate studies. They eventually settled in Berkeley, California, and Snyder got a job teaching at the University of California. She published her first book, Season of Ponies, in 1964, soon followed by The Velvet Room in 1965, and then Black and Blue Magic in 1966. Snyder published The Egypt Game in 1967, which was a runner-up for the Newbery Medal. Her writing output was prolific, consisting of more than 40 books for children and young adults during her career. She won the Newbery Honor 3 times. Snyder died of a stroke on October 7th, 2014 in San Francisco, California.
I love that she knew she was a writer at age 8. Yeah.
She just had to wait a little bit to get her life, established. She's like, all right, now I'm going to crank the books out.
She's like, oh, the pieces will fall into place, but I'm definitely a writer.
That she was a teacher, I think, also really comes through in this. Because, like, as you're reading,
kids.
like, the dialogue, I think, really is true to how kids interact with each other. And I think we talked about this with Judy Blume too. Sometimes people have a real ear for how young children talk and act. And she really captures how kids interact with each other. I thought Snyder did a really great job with that too. Like she really gets kids.
I feel like even when she added something about like how kids viewed adults, well, I don't know. I guess some kids might think that way, but I know that there was like one where it was like Toby remarking on his teacher and how like she's really good at like making them think about something or like get really excited about something. And I was like, oh, that sounds like such an adult way of like trying to worm their way into having a kid think that. But
his reason for thinking that was so funny because his motivation was like, I understand this about this adult, and I can see that, like, if I sidetrack her into a thing that she thinks is exciting us, she won't give us a quiz.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Just for them to all end up super interested in the end.
Right. Yeah.
So, like, really, I think
who
she
played
won.
who?
Yeah.
But I felt like that was believable from Toby because he is, like, he's very charismatic. He's the class clown. Like, he really, he understands how to manipulate. Has such a bad reputation as a word, I feel like. But
Steer.
Perfect. He understood how to like steer people in directions that were beneficial for everyone, really. He's never mean-spirited or like even when he's being the oracle, he's doing it from a place of like love and excitement, wanting to extend the magic for everyone that is important to him.
He did a lot of work with that. Like I
He
was
really
like,
did.
because I was so sure from the beginning that it had to be like
The professor.
Yeah,
Same.
just for it to be like, no, actually, I found these books and was looking through and looked up the
quote
words.
book.
His quote
Yeah.
book. It's a lot of dedication back in '68.
And he did like the forgery handwriting. He made it like all shaky so that it would look not his handwriting.
Dedication.
Yeah, Toby was really, he was thinking about the big picture.
And then he got worried. He's like, oh, that question's too direct. I can't answer where the stuffed octopus is. What am I going to do?
Yeah, I actually liked how they made Toby because April and Melanie didn't really like him at first. Eventually, they like added more like depth into him, and obviously, like he was really interested in everything that was going on with it. And so, I guess to your point about like finding your people, like he definitely eventually, like you realize, like, oh, he belonged in this group.
Yeah.
And Ken seemed like just along for the ride.
Toby's his person, right? Like they are peas in a pod. And he knows this is important to Toby. So he is kind of along for the ride. But then he gets sucked in too. And like, no, the scope of his imagination is never going to be as big as April's. But he's still finding joy in it. And he's finding value in being with this weird little group of people that have found each other. And I think that's the through line for this book. You know, you start with April being kind of untethered. You know, she's plopped down in a place where she doesn't really know anybody. She doesn't really even have a relationship with her grandmother. Her mom just is like,
Yeah, here you go.
New man. That's more important to me.
Right.
I can't have this kid along.
I'm trying to be a star.
She did a Bella's mom.
Bella! Where the hell have you been, Lilka?
Yeah, totally. Just kind of dumps her with the closest relative, even though there's not much of a relationship there. But April really quickly connects with Melanie. And so that's clearly the main relationship in the book. But we have all of these other little satellite people, and we have the adults in the book who are very important. And so you see connections to the grandmother develop over time with Caroline, who she ultimately does end up calling grandma only after there's a trauma where she finally becomes truly vulnerable, I think. And then you have the other adults that are important too. The professor is in there, and we learn more about his story. He's kind of in the background until the very end. The Rosses, both of those parents, we learn about them. We have the librarian, who is actually pretty important to these kids because she supports their endeavors, you know, whatever that looks like. And she doesn't judge it. She's not like, no, you can't have these books. Those are for, you know, adults. She's just like, great. I have kids that are hungry to learn stuff. I am 100% in on, I'm going to set books aside for them. And I think with us being librarians,
I was about to say.
Yeah.
we've all had kids like that at the library
Yeah.
where it's just like, you
wasn't
find such joy in their enthusiasm, and you do start like, oh, I see this. I'm going to set it aside for Gabriella. I'm going to set this aside for Timothy. And like, that's great. I think that that's very real too. And so to me, that's sort of the main thrust of the book, is that idea about finding yourself when you find other people who you can be yourself around.
I don't know what their public library was like. We don't have a lot of details, but they weren't limited to 2 books. They weren't told, oh, you need a parent's permission. There weren't all sorts of weird arbitrary restrictions placed on like children coming to the library by themselves in the 60s, which I'm sure could have been the case, or at other times as well.
Which makes it more frustrating whenever you have something in pop culture that like paints librarians as like always trying to like make every patron be quiet or every customer be quiet. So I guess I just like really love when someone paints a librarian as anything other than that. I will say what I really liked about the introduction of April and Melanie's friendship is you really thought April was going to be just like this really singular character, because the way that she's introduced with her like
Eyelashes.
yeah.
Hanging
Oh
off.
my God. Yeah. And not done well whatsoever. And she just goes to this like lunch and
with her first doll.
yeah. And, talking about Hollywood and like, just trying to seem a lot more interesting and like talking about her mom and everything, understanding the knowing looks that she's getting from Melanie and her mom. But then you get Melanie and they go to her room, and then like Melanie like pulls out, or I don't think she pulls out. I think
It falls out because
it
April
falls out.
grabs the book that she's hiding them
Yeah, that she hides like these little like paper dolls in. And then she's like, yeah, I like to like do these little stories and so you're just like, oh, like they found each other. I was not getting that from Melanie in the beginning, but it was kind of like slowly introduced, and I kind of liked how they did that. And I think she did that really well for almost every character.
in.
It's kind of like you don't think they would somehow work well together, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh no, they definitely
Well,
work
and
well
I think
together.
that's very true to life. Like
Yeah.
when we meet people, we just have that first impression, the
Mhm.
sort of superficial, how you size somebody up. But then with time, you get these little breadcrumbs
Yeah.
of who they
Mhm.
really are, and they let their guard down.
Mhm.
And that's when you really, you make these amazing friendships that
Mhm.
are so strong and so true. I thought that was really great. So I guess just for context, in case anyone is listening who hasn't read the books, she's very clear in saying these are not paper dolls. So they are paper people, but she goes to like great pains
Sorry, Melanie.
to like make them fit the vision she has in her
Mhm.
head. So she develops her story and her characters first, and then she goes looking for matches to that. So for like the one guy and the one family, he's supposed to be a detective.
Yeah.
So she hunts and hunts in like magazines and newspapers till she finds a head.
I love that. It's like
that looks
storyboarding.
appropriately
Yeah.
a detective.
Yeah. I love that she's like storyboarding and then like also casting.
Yeah.
Like you just like she could totally fit into like the film industry
She
when
could.
she's older.
Yeah, she has a vision.
Yeah.
But like April just seamlessly like glides into it because Melanie's, you know what? This weird kid is not going to judge me about the paper dolls. Like she looks intrigued. And so she's
Yeah.
saying like, and he's the detective and this is his wife and she does this. And
April's like, yeah.
oh
That's
yeah,
like
and
the
then they're going to
detective.
do this. And so it turns into this thing that morphs into the two of them creating together.
Mhm.
And there's that really precious little moment where she says like, well, the other kids I know, they don't really like imagination games. And
Mhm.
April says, well, I've never thought about it, but I guess the games that I play are imagination games. Like that,
Mhm.
that is what I do. And so just that sort of light bulb over the head moment for both of them, I think is really great.
Well, I liked when Elizabeth came to town and April's grandma's like, yeah, there's a new girl. The grandma's like, yeah, she's kind of close in age to you all. And April's like, well, how old is she? And grandma's like, she's 9. And April's like, 9 is not close to 11. Which, like, looking back, it's like, okay, that's ridiculous. But, like, back then, I could see the vision.
True.
I could see
You're
the
in 6th
vision.
grade. You don't want to play with a 4th grader, except at the same time, they're playing with a 4-year-old.
Right.
Yeah.
But they're like, he can keep a secret.
Yeah.
Apparently.
He
Marshall
never
doesn't
thinks.
think on anybody.
We need to bring back that word. It's a great
Fink
word.
is so funny.
For real, Marshall didn't even really think on the guy that killed the kid. Someone had to tell him it was okay to tell. That's also, I think we should talk about that. This is maybe the only book I can think of where the murder of a child is like just
Glossed over.
Yeah.
it's just a plot element that's kind of
Yeah.
looming in the background. And I think that's another reason like this book connected well for me was like the kids are not super like wound up about that murder.
Mhm.
But
They're
they're
like more like it's the
definitely
parents.
aware of it. And I think that to me was very much like in childhood, you would see on the news when your parents were watching, or like if your parents took the paper, you'd see on the front page something. That being in the background that whole time is really interesting because they're not super scared of it. But then when things are a little weird in the game,
All of a sudden,
you
it's
do
like,
see that they do kind of have hairs on the back of their necks going up. Someone watching us, like it's the murderer. What,
I didn't include it in the bio, but like I read like interviews where she talked about like as a kid doing like doing all these imagination things. Like she had a bowl where they had like a little orphan Annie picture at the bottom, and she would drink her soup really quickly so that she wouldn't drown. She described all sorts of like just things like that, like
ritualistic.
yeah, like
things.
things that make sense when you're a kid with an active imagination.
Yeah.
That she would completely be like, oh yeah, that makes sense that you would line up your stuffed animals to protect you against the murderer. Like,
Yeah.
she
Clearly would
completely
not
get that.
work, but when you're a kid, it made you feel better,
Yeah.
and that comes through in so many, like the kids are very ritualistic. Like they create this whole little universe of, their little secret society. They have their own like code writing and I
And
did
their
that when I was a
names.
kid.
Their names were
the
so
hieroglyphics.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know if you guys' copy of the book. So I listened to the audiobook, but I also followed along with the ebook. Like they had pictures of like the
pictures.
hieroglyphics.
Yes.
And,
Oh no, I just
Yes,
got the audiobook.
pictures.
yeah.
I read it because I got the audio book,
Actually
and then
love the pictures in the
Libby
book.
glitched and
Yeah.
was like, I can't stream this, so I had to read it in print, which I
And, like,
was grumpy about, but then it
the
was fine
oracle
because then I got to look at the
messages.
pictures of the
Yes.
hieroglyphics, and they were
And
They
here's
were
like
really
all
fun.
of their little
Yes.
names and the
Yes.
symbols.
oh my gosh, their names.
love
I love their
that.
names, and I love the illustrations. I
Neferbeth. I think
Neferbeth.
it's so cute.
They were like, yeah,
that was
They look, they're like, she kind of looks like Nefertiti.
Yeah.
They're like, all right, she's in the game. I love how like they were like, oh, we can't play with a 9-year-old, and they were like, oh no, Elizabeth is great. She
Elizabeth's
has
cool.
to join the game. Yeah.
Okay, so did the copy that y'all read have, okay, because I was listening to the audiobook and following along, there was one chapter that wasn't in the ebook that was in the audiobook.
Oh really?
And it's in the beginning of the book where Melanie goes to April's house and hides her eyelashes.
Oh, yeah, because of the
Yes.
starting school. And she's like afraid that
Yeah.
the other kids will
So that
like
was-
not understand
she sort
the
of
eyelashes.
ran her hands over them,
And
and
she
then the
took the-
glue
yeah.
stuck because the kids
This
are
isn't
going to
gonna
be
go well.
merciless.
It wasn't
yeah,
in
she
the
saved
ebook?
her
It
from
wasn't
the
in the ebook.
eyelashes.
That's
Oh.
weird.
That's so
Well,
weird.
they were in.
Wasn't
it
it
was in the
unabridged?
ebook that I read.
It wasn't in the
Abridged?
ebook that I read.
Yeah,
It was so weird. I was like, okay, they just
That's
skipped
weird.
a chapter.
That's
like,
odd.
yeah.
Hmm.
that's a really important plot.
Yeah.
I think so,
Well, I
too.
think that says so much about Melanie's character too, is like she really cares for April and she gets it. And she understands that this is April kind of, that's her like defense mechanism.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But she's like, man, those kids at Wilson, they are not
Yeah.
gonna get it.
Yeah.
And they are gonna beat her into submission because she's different.
Yeah.
And so she's trying to protect her friend.
Yeah. I love how she's like, yeah, she takes them off to read.
because
she can't see through them because they're like drooping. Like
yeah, she definitely did not apply them correctly in that case. If they are obscuring her vision, she probably needed to cut them. And also, you're not supposed to reuse them multiple times. Melanie saved her from an eye infection, almost certainly, as well as like social off-trip.
Well, and also she like the first time they meet and she has to take it off to read, she like rips out her real eyelash.
Yes, because she probably applied them, like you have to apply them on the lash line. You don't apply them so like you glue them to the lashes.
So she like used them like extensions, like glued on, and then just that was painful to read. She's just pulling her eyelashes out.
This is a Sesame Street character. I was thinking.
Got big snuffy vibes.
Did you remember the part where like Marshall took one of the eyelashes and applied them to security on one of his button eyes? I was so sad they didn't have an illustration of that because that would have been adorable.
I really love Marshall. Like that's another one where like she just captured an old soul child so well.
Yeah. He was very well written as a character.
Yeah, I felt like all of the characters were so easy to picture in my head. Like, I think sometimes when I go back and read children's books, sometimes, like, my imagination's not there enough to, like, really picture them but I feel like they were very clear in my head for this book.
Yeah.
Speaking of the characters, what do we think about the adults in the book? Like, there's a pretty huge spectrum from with Dorothea to really great adults. Like,
I love the interactions with the kids or mostly how the kids think of them. So there's April, and is it with the professor at the beginning where she's like, at first, like he was just very curt. And so at first, like it was just to try to get him to talk more. But then I just started to like over talk. So I really liked that interaction. And then when Toby's like talking about his dad being upset about his costume being ruined, and he's like, so how many people got injured? And then he's like, what are you talking about? He's like, well, clearly you were hit by a truck. Like, who else was? And he like was explaining like, yeah, I don't know. My dad didn't seem to care about my costume at first, but then all of a sudden he like had some bright idea and spent like a whole day.
Student in art school.
Because he was an artist.
Yeah, so he was an artist, and so he like took a while to like actually create the costume. So then he felt a certain type of way that it came back ruined. So he was like grounded essentially for like 3 days.
And it was ruined when he like when they tried to cram him through the like fence.
Yeah.
I liked what was it? It was Melanie's dad. Whenever April comes by, what does he say?
The
like
cruelest month.
Mr. Ross was great.
He's great.
He reminded me of a slightly less sarcastic version of Calvin's dad from the Calvin and Hobbes. A kinder version of. Like a slightly more academic, kinder version of Calvin's dad from Calvin and Hobbes.
Well, I like that he just never explained it to April why he calls her that. And she's not particularly bothered by it. She just is like, that's weird.
She's like, oh, okay. I understand now, but it's still not funny to me.
Yeah, it's not a very good joke, but I guess if you're an adult.
Or even when the kids, well, this is about the kids, but when they call her February.
Yeah.
I was like, I didn't think the name April was that big a deal.
I know. Me neither. I'm like, I'm not imaginative enough, I guess.
Melody's like, oh, thank God she got a nickname. They've accepted her.
That's cute.
I'm so glad I got rid of the eyelashes.
Yeah.
The Rosses were really kind to
they're
April.
Great. Yeah.
I love how they're like, yeah, we're going to go to a concert and leave
April in charge.
I was like, who is April babysitting? Because I didn't realize at first that Melanie was also going to the concert. And I'm like, oh, it's just the two of them. Okay, that kind of makes sense.
Well, and then that went as poorly as it could have because she almost got murdered.
Yeah, I imagine the parents are like, what happened?
Yeah, tell me one more time what you did with my 4-year-old.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
I mean, I did babysit when I was in 6th grade. So, like, I get that. It was a different time.
But also there's a murder on the loose.
But it's also April. Like, I can see having Melanie babysit.
Yeah.
April is so...
She's kind of
that was a
wild
choice.
Child.
She just is very not the kid that you would think is, like, responsible enough to be in charge of your 4-year-old.
Insubordinate and churlish.
So it was kind of like, guys, that predictably went poorly. Maybe you should have asked if they could, like, Marshall could go to Caroline's and just hang out with April there and more like a mother's helper rather than like a true you're in charge.
Maybe they figured
They had great faith in her.
But he said, remember, they told him that he was having somebody to come visit because he didn't like being babysat.
Because he's a very mature old soul 4-year-old. And they probably like, oh, he likes April. Like maybe
April
they can have a chill evening at
visit
home.
too. Like, that sounds fancy. I'm going to visit.
Yes. I didn't like, speaking of adults, I didn't like the store owner guy only because when they said that even if the kids were there first, he would see all the grown-ups before the variety shop guy. Because when they went to go buy the pens, they were dedicated to this hieroglyphics and color thing. Like they had to wait so long. Like it took a whole other extra day. And I'm like,
yeah, that's not fair.
How kids? They was there first.
And they had money. They had like,
shut up and take my money.
They made money for it. Their money's just as good as the grown-ups. Yeah. Well, and that guy was a problem anyways. Like, I get he was trying to do the right thing by his nephew or cousin or whoever it was. But, like, don't make up alibis for the murderer guy.
Yeah.
Like, that's not great.
But, like, do you think, did he know? I don't think he knew.
He must have suspected, because why did he make up an alibi for him?
That's true.
So maybe he was kind of in denial and he was trying to, like, well, sure, he must have been here. He definitely wouldn't murder anybody.
But it's like, if you knew you didn't see him, then you know he probably wasn't there because it's not like he's going to be in the store if you're not in the store.
Right.
Because you only have him.
Yeah. I did. This is so unrelated. I did like how Marshall like described him as not black, not white, but like spotted.
I was like, he got vitiligo.
I think he just had freckles.
That meant it was freckles.
Yeah. Because he said he had orange hair.
Orange hair.
Like, okay, so this is a freckled, redheaded
You know
person.
what? Yeah. Orange hair. Okay.
Yeah.
And then I was like, okay, it sounds like he's describing not a person at first because
like a Dr. Seuss character.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and I think that is one of those things where like adults would totally write that off as like nonsensical, but he was accurate. Like that's actually a good description if you don't have the like vocabulary to.
Marshall's a very like accurate, literal 4-year-old.
And he's very observant.
Yeah.
Something else that I liked in the book. So like, obviously like Melanie and Marsha are like black, but you can tell like their parents like do like Black Power demonstration type stuff with them, and I like that. Like how they kind of just like slid that in there every so often.
When Marshall's like, I need a sign.
I need a sign.
Yeah, my sign.
He's like, oh, he's never been trick or treating before. We do demonstrations at the college.
Well, let's talk about race in the book too. So this is definitely, I think, for the time. So this was written in the 60s. A really diverse cast of characters, but it doesn't really hammer you over the head with that. Like it's just part of who each kid is.
It felt like she was trying to just paint the picture of a neighborhood where there's lots of different types of people and kids living in there. Like she kind of, I think there was a sentence or two at the beginning of the book where she talks about like, kids who might speak different languages if they chose to, and then she kind of just moved on and introduces.
There was part in the beginning where the grandma's like, yeah, they're blacks. And I was just like, okay, this was written in the 60s.
Yeah.
So I was just like, okay. But I was just like, blacks. But, you know, I was like, okay, it's written in the 60s. I was like, if it was written now, I'd be like, okay, yeah. So clearly
that's
they're trying,
not cool.
I'm like, clearly they're trying to paint the grandmas racist. But that's not the case in this book. So, and also it was interesting listening and following along with the ebook because the audiobook said black, whereas like the ebook said African American. So it kind of makes me wonder, like, I feel like the ebook was probably the original where it said African American, and then maybe they changed it to black.
Oh, they changed the terminology.
You think it was that way around?
Okay.
Because I don't think African American as terminology was in vogue in the 60s.
In the 60s, okay. And then there was also like other phrases that were said in the ebook that were switched in like the audiobook. I think instead of saying
kooks, such a silly word.
They said nut, and then in one of them, something else they said like, you dig this or something like that. Like just to kind of make it seem, I guess, like more like Because I think the audiobook is from like the 90s.
Okay.
So,
Okay,
yeah.
I think I must have read the original text because, like, I remember that scene in the beginning because, like, I know because it felt like when the grandmother was when she said, "You know that they're black," or the way she said it, like it felt very like you wouldn't say it that way now.
Yeah.
I think so. I think, and then mine did say "kook" because I remember it felt like outdated slang.
Yeah.
So I guess that must have been the original text, and then you said your audiobook was like copyrighted in the 90s.
In the 90s. Mhm.
So maybe they tried to
Update
update so it wouldn't sound so kind of jarring.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get that scene where she's like, oh, there's, a little girl about your age that's in the Casa Rosada, which is their apartment complex, and you go visit them. They're black.
Yeah.
I was like, uh-oh. Because I was like, I don't remember this going this way. But there's never any other reference to that. And I think for the time in the 60s, like, we're all recoiling as like, oh, God, that sounds really racist. But I think at the time that was probably pretty progressive. Like, she's just letting the kid know, like, don't be weird about this.
Yeah.
She's a cool kid. Go play.
Yes. And with when they talked about Elizabeth in the ebook, which was older, they just said an Asian girl answered the door or something like that. And then I think in the audiobook, they specified it was a Chinese girl,
yeah.
which makes sense because like you gave her a Chinese last name. So like you don't have to just say she's Asian. Like you can say that she's Chinese. Was one of the boys, was he also supposed to be not white?
They said that, I kind of forgot. Like, I feel like they said that at one point in the book. I think they mentioned his last name at one point, and I was like, oh, is he the character that they like introduced? I don't know.
And then
I meant to go back and clarify that,
name.
but then I forgot.
Hold on. Kamada. You're right. Sorry. So I think he's meant to be.
He was one of the chaperones. He had a real team.
Oh, and then he had a clean cut, all American Asian look about him.
Okay, it was that
He
character
walked with
that
a high school swagger.
Also, Toby. His last name is Aviar.
Is that what?
So Toby's interesting because Hannah and I were talking about this before you guys got here. At the end of my book, there's a preview of the next book, the sequel to this book, which my understanding is it just picks up like directly after this ends.
Although it was written 30 years later.
And they are still playing the Egypt game. But I think it centers more on Toby and it's called The Gypsy Game, which I was like, uh-oh.
All right, when they were like, what do you know about? I was like, oh.
But then I looked it up and it seems like it's actually a really great book about like educating people on Romani culture and stuff. And apparently Toby is some degree Romani.
Oh, okay.
In that. So we learned that about him. So I had initially thought, oh, he's meant to be Latino, maybe.
In the wiki, there's like a wiki for
there's
the
a
author.
wiki for everything.
I know.
Wow.
And they have his race listed as African/Black.
For Toby? Okay, I think that's just wrong because it does. I saw multiple things saying that he is of Romani.
The TV tropes page said that too.
In the Gypsy.
Of course, the most authoritative source ever.
But yeah, I definitely, I want to read the next one now. I'm very attached to these little characters and I want to see how she handles that because it was written in the 90s.
97.
So she picked up again much later, which, maybe she felt like, hey, this is something I need to educate people on for whatever reason.
At first I was like, okay, the Egypt game, where is this going? But I feel like it was actually kind of cool to see like the little tidbits that they like dropped in there. The kids are clearly like, they're clearly making like informed decisions on like how they're going about trying to play pretend in Egypt. And they consider themselves Egyptians. Like they're using things that they learned in school. Like when they learned about the oracles, they kind of like incorporated that when they asked the oracle questions. I thought that was really cool. Or like them going to the library and grabbing books. So it's not like they're just watching TV and seeing how Hollywood portrays Egyptians and deciding to take that on. Like they're like actually like doing their version of research. So I thought that was interesting.
Well, so let's talk about that more because I think this idea of cultural appropriation versus appreciation is something that we talk about a lot now. This is antiquity, right? It's not, there's no modern people right now that are practicing faith in this way, to my knowledge. So I don't know if distance makes it a little bit more okay because, certainly we say now like, somebody's culture is not a costume, right? and they clearly dress up as Egyptian.
Right.
But it's antiquity. It's not modern Egypt. Like you're saying, they really do seem to try to educate themselves. I mean, sometimes they miss, like when they have the funeral rites for the parakeet.
Yeah.
Rest in peace, Pete.
Yeah.
When they mummify Pete, they've really taken pains to like get the steps.
They're like,
right.
what kind of oil do we need to have?
They miss because they use bicycle oil, which I'm sure was not what was used in that time. But, they actually brine the body. They don't remove the organs because Elizabeth Neferbeth is too traumatized by that to like allow it. But yeah, they wrap in oiled cloth and everything. So like they've done a lot of research for the age they are to try to get it right. Like they're taking it very seriously. So I want to see, what do you guys think about where does any of this fall on appropriation versus appreciation? Was it okay that they dressed up as Egyptians for Halloween? I don't know. What are we supposed to think about this now?
It's interesting. I think because they're like kids,
Yeah.
it kind of is. I think it's okay because they're kids and they're just like exploring and trying to figure out, and they're doing what they feel like is, they're following from what they found in like research, and there really is like no adult involvement in this. Where I think a lot of cultural appropriation comes from like also like adult biases that they have, where I don't think that's a case with these kids. But I don't know. I feel like I'm not greatly articulating what I'm trying to say, but I think that just from how they portrayed, I mean, obviously like nobody would dress their kids up now as like Egyptians, but also like the parents didn't dress them up. Like they dressed themselves up this way and just kind of vibe with it, So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I think the same as Hawa, that I think that them being kids kind of makes it a little like easier to digest while you're reading it. And then also what Heather was saying, that like because it was like the antiquity of it was also like played a role, because even before they start the game, I think they say like April is really interested in lots of different ancient cultures. So she mentions like Greece,
because
Mesopotamia, right? She mentions like several different
any kind of like ancient times are interesting. And I think at one point they do kind of incorporate something Greek. There's a mention of like, well, that wasn't authentic anyways because the oracles were Greek. Like,
they definitely described the Oracle of Delphi, I think, unless
because that's what they were learning about
underneath,
in school, right?
Unless there was another oracle that did something that sounded like descriptions of how the Oracle of Delphi was supposed to function.
So then
if I remember correctly.
Yeah. So then it just felt like just kids being really appreciative or like really interested in history, and then that made it just like easier to really like get into it and not feel like too weird about some of the things that they do, like dressing up like Egyptians
Walk like an Egyptian.
in the book.
Because they are. It's not just Halloween. Like they are dressing up for the little rituals and rites that they're doing in their temple.
Egyptians.
Yeah.
The 6 Egyptians.
Yeah.
Well, and they also like their temple is also. I mean, they do have the like. I think it's like a cheap plaster bust of Nefertiti that was junk from the A to Z shop. But they also have like a statue of Diana. and it's like, no, that fits. Like, these are old things in our old temple. And let's see. Were there other things that we wanted to talk about? I feel like there's a lot in this book that we can discuss. There's
the amount of bacteria on April's eyelashes. Did you write that, Hannah?
I might have.
I mean, it's nasty. She's using the same pair of eyelashes for months.
Remind you, Melanie takes them back to her house and hides them underneath the dresser drawer or whatever, and like she's still. Oh.
And they've been on the stuffed animal. They've been all over the place. She takes them off and puts them on tables and stuff because she needs to read.
So, this is like 10, but there's the place that I take ballet at, it puts on yearly shows, and there is a lucky pair of false eyelashes.
A shared one?
We don't we don't wear them anymore. They're in a little plastic box, and we put them in the dressing room at each performance, and they are coded. They have been around for like 10 years, and nobody touches them to their eye. They are just a mascot that goes in the dressing room now. And if anybody were to put them on their eye at this point, God knows what infections they would get. They're just that we have it labeled with the eyelashes.
Nice.
They're just a ceremonial good luck charm now because you don't want to reuse.
What was the start? Like, why
are they?
eyelashes? Yeah.
You would have to ask my friend Sarah, who kept them, and then when she moved to another town, passed them on to me, and I'm now the keeper of the eyelashes.
Oh, okay.
I guess we haven't talked a lot about April's relationship with her family, which I do think is an interesting bit of dysfunction that is in the book. We've certainly had other books we've read with dysfunctional families, but this one is like from a distance, which is interesting. Like the only real communications we see between April and her mom are through these infrequent postcards and letters that she gets. So what did y'all feel?
Our phone's not a thing?
They were, but it would have been long distance back
Okay.
then. So it probably would have been expensive. And her mom is not an established actress. Like she says, like, well, she's mostly a vocalist and she's been in as an extra in some things. So
It would have been out of
I
her
don't
budget.
think there's
Yeah.
a lot of money there.
Okay. It's so funny because she was like, you don't know who my mom is? It's just like, girl.
Nobody knows who your mom is. But like Melanie like clocks that immediately.
Yeah.
To look a certain way, and she's putting on airs and trying to seem impressive because she's not feeling confident,
Right.
which is very mature.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I was like, that was really mature of Melanie to like recognize that at what, 11?
So I totally bought that. Like, you knew, like,
Yeah.
there goes that kid. He's making a ruckus again because his family's weird. He don't get enough attention at home. Like, those things like in your head sometimes. But we're seeing it more because we are.
But also you pick up on stuff like that because I think what I got from it too was that April could see that the mom and Melanie were both picking up on something. And so if the mom is probably like that too, and maybe like would have conversations and like would pick up on stuff like that. And I think that Melanie just kind of, I just felt like it was just like a natural, like you understood where it was coming
And
from.
Melonie's mom is also a school teacher.
Yeah.
So like, I think she also probably is pretty insightful about kids.
Yeah.
But like April, I think also gets that they're not judging her for it. Like that they're understanding her, not judging her. And I think that's cool.
I think it's interesting that is Caroline trying with April, or is she just kind of like?
I think she is. I think she's just realizing that the more she tries to like
pull her
in, the more she's going to fight to get out.
Okay.
And that it has to be on her own time and her own terms.
And I guess that is ended up being what happened. Yeah.
It worked. Like she ends up being the soft place to land when April is almost murdered.
Yes. And even before that, I think there was an instance where I think she receives a letter from her mom or something, and she's kind of like just crying and like just kind of like there. And I felt like that was kind of like the beginning of the turning point of their relationship, which made me happy for April because it seems like she's going to be where she's at for a while. And so I think that, not only she found her people and her friends, but I think it's also good that, she can feel like her grandmother and her home is a safe space for her.
Yeah. She has found family, and she has blood family now that she has more depth of connection to than, her mom, whose affection I think she was constantly chasing after, but her mom's so self-centered, it's just not going to be there.
Yeah.
The end where she does break down with I thought it was great, the thing at Christmas where her mom sends a thing finally saying like, it's been months now, 6 months. Her mom finally sends something saying like, Nick and I are going to be in Palm Springs for a few days. Maybe you can come
and join us
for like a day for Christmas. And April's like, you know what? No. And she writes back and says, basically,
I have
no,
plan- yeah.
I have plans
Yeah.
with my friends and with my grandma.
You know what?
We
And
just did the tree.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, I did too.
yeah, because girl, what? Also, like, I'm a kid. You gonna be like, yeah, just meet me here. Like, just
Yeah.
let me know. Like,
Now,
Right.
Dorothea is definitely up there for me in the like pantheon of bad parents that we've had in books that we've read.
The worst.
I love that we get a range.
We get like the really great Rosses who are super supportive. And then I
Mrs.
found
Chung.
Mrs. Chung really great.
Working in
too.
the
Like,
store
when she's
now.
working at the A to Z, she's going to get things into like tip top shape there because it's like gross and dusty and neglected. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Because everyone loves the professor now, even
Mhm.
and everybody's coming to shop in the store, especially all the people who signed the petition to say that he was a evil murderer. Like,
Yeah, because they're guilt. Like everybody comes and buys something junky because they feel so bad that they were mean to him.
nobody's going to Mr. Schmidt's store anymore.
And now the professor kind of has like a little found family too, because he was grieving his wife for so
Mm-hmm.
long. We talked a little bit about the writing, and it really sparkles in here at times. There were some quotes in here that I pulled where I was just like, that's really well done. The one time she says, a life unknown to grown-ups and lived by kids alone. And I thought that was such a like concise and perfect way to like express the magical places that we have as children
Mm-hmm.
that's away from the adults, and it's not understandable to adults. But then later, towards the end of the book, she says, it's just awful when you go back to something that was so great the way you remembered it, and it's no good anymore. It even ruins remembering.
Mm.
And I think that is
Yeah.
the transition from childhood to adulthood.
Yeah.
Your world becomes small and the magic goes away, and you become just enmeshed in the real world around you and the details of your day to day, and you lose that sparkle and that magic of what was basically like an alley lot, like a junkyard, essentially, which, you know, to an adult would be like nothing. I mean, to the professor, it was where he stashed junk that he didn't want in the shop. It was a nothing space, and to them, it was another world. Like,
And that
Right.
is, and like with them being 11, that is kind of that
That's
age,
the
where
age.
they're at, you know?
yeah,
It kind of vaguely reminds me of the Chronicles of Narnia, because isn't there
Mhm.
like, I think the older sister character like at some point doesn't come back, and they say it's because she stopped believing
Yeah.
or something. Yeah.
but I think for me, it's she in two sentences that are chapters apart, to
Mhm.
me, manages to capture that arc so perfectly that it takes a lot of authors whole books and multiple books to even try to flesh out. She's really sharp with her writing sometimes. Another thing that I thought was really great was when the professor was talking about Anne, his wife who died. He was an anthropologist, and she was artsy.
Mm-hmm.
And he says that she had said that anthropologists only like people in general, and she liked people in particular.
That was a nice.
I was like,
phrase.
nailed it. And then he said, after a while, the store and I became dusty junkyards, and I didn't care. And I thought that was a really beautiful description of what depression can look like for
Mhm.
people. You're just kind of alone with your memories, and they start to get hazy and dusty, and they're less beautiful than they were because everything's getting kind of dulled down sometimes when you're grieving. And yeah, I thought she did just a tremendous job at points where it was like I would read a sentence and it would kind of take my breath away, and I'd have to read it a few more times.
I can honestly say, like, I know a lot of times, like, a lot of middle grade or kids' books can be kind of, like, predictable for people reading it as, like, adults. But, like, that didn't necessarily feel like the case with me. I also didn't read the synopsis before going in. I just kind of started the book. Like, I definitely thought the professor was going to be some kind of shifty, shady person. So, like, for him to not only have been, like, the person that was kind of, like, behind the oracles, it ends up being, like, you know, between him and Marshall, because of course all the newspapers are like, Marshall's a hero, but like,
Yeah.
which I thought was super cute. So, you know, between that and him becoming a hero and being more integrated back into the community and like found family with these kids, I thought was really cool. Because the first one they were like, yeah, he just wiped through his window and is peeping through the hole. I'm like, That's kind of weird, ain't it?
It was, but then I felt like it was such a true way of like somebody just very slowly coming back
Into society.
to joy
Yeah.
in society.
Yeah.
Like he had that little bit, that little glimpse, and then he started to be drawn to it and interact more.
Yeah.
And then that he did, you know, he did do the oracle for the security being missing after he had put security to shelter security when Marshall left it behind and it rained. You know, that little olive branch to the world, you know, like that little gesture where he actually tried to interact when he really couldn't do that within the confines of his store at that moment.
It's like the joy you get of people watching. And that's kind of like, you know, it's hard sometimes, like when it comes to like adults and kids, and it's just like you're automatically, your mind wants to think, okay, this could go bad, but like it was the exact opposite. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I loved it. I love this little book.
Yeah, it was fun.
So I guess we have our two big questions as to whether the book holds up and whether we would recommend this book now.
Yes. Yes and yes.
Yeah. And yeah,
Same.
Yeah, I think so.
I'm curious about the sequel now.
I know. I'm
Yeah,
gonna
same.
get it and just keep going because I don't want to say
Wait, what
goodbye
is
to
the-
these characters.
What is the name of it?
The Gypsy Game,
Oh, okay. So,
and it does pick up like immediately. I think,
okay.
like literally, I think the next day.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I did think so. Christmas is when this ends. And I did think it was kind of weird that the professor just thought like everyone would be cool bringing their kids to come do this on Christmas Eve.
Mm.
That seems odd to me. Like people have plans on Christmas.
Yeah.
But, you know, it worked out.
And you said that the next book focuses on Toby.
I think Toby is more centered instead of April and Melanie. So.
Gotcha.
We should take a trip to Egypt, aka Arundel Mills.
That's your old stomping ground.
I saw on TikTok and it's just like, oh, when she says she wants to take a trip to Egypt, it's like taking the next best thing. 5 people said that to me.
Really?
Never
Because I used to work there.
Oh, really?
There. Yeah, I worked there.
Yeah.
They're about to do another mummy.
We could go see that and take pictures.
Each episode, we ask whether our book passes the Bechdel test. The Bechdel test asks whether a work features 2 female characters who talk to each other about something that doesn't involve men or boys. So, does it pass?
Yeah. I feel like
I
in the
think
beginning,
so.
yeah,
Mhm.
April and Melanie, before like everybody else is kind of like involved in the mix, they do kind of have, they talk about the Egypt game, they talk about Egypt, they talk
Her
about
paper
books.
dolls.
Yeah.
But
For
but
dolls.
one of the paper dolls is a man.
Yeah, so I guess that's my
But I think that's
question.
just their
Like,
imagination overall.
yeah, does that really count? Because like, and obviously,
Eyelashes.
like they talk about like different male god figures as well, but like I don't know that they're really talking about men or boys. They're talking about like
Yeah.
a shared interest in history or a shared
Right.
interest in imagining for the paper doll families.
Yeah.
So I feel like it does
Yeah.
pass.
It does, you know, and it wasn't one of those books where it turned into like, oh, the boys joined the group and now they have a crush on the boys. Like I
Right.
thought it was going to try to like lean into that for a
Yeah,
second.
there's
and I'm
none of
glad it
that.
didn't.
There was a refreshing lack of romance in
Yeah,
this book.
I
Yes.
don't even go there. It's just the friendships and the connecting with each other over the games they're playing.
Mhm.
And I guess too, she didn't really talk so much with her mom or with her grandmother about her mom, but there's certainly those moments where they're together with the letters that, you know, hurt her feelings and disappoint her again
Yeah.
in her mom. So I think it passes.
I think so too.
I think this is I wouldn't say it's like an explicitly feminist work, but I
Mhm.
also don't think that there's a whole lot of misogyny in here
Yeah.
either.
Yeah. And I'm curious what she does in the second one, because I think by the time you reach age 12 in a lot of young adult novels, like
That's when it
they'll start to
starts.
introduce the like romance in it. And I wonder if she like fell into that or was like, nah, I'm gonna hold off because that's not the point of this book, you know?
I'm curious to read her books that are meant for older grades too, because I'd be interested. I mean, she's so incisive about
like if she falls into
people.
the Judy Blume trap.
Right. Like, does that go away as the characters get older? I would be interested to see. I did have a little note in here. I think this book has some really fabulous vocabulary in it. Like, you've got words like prostrate, and like I think there's a lot of like good like SAT vocabulary in a book that's really designed for younger kids. I mean, this feels pretty squarely like middle grades to me, not YA. So yeah, I was impressed with just I feel like it would be very educational for a lot of kids. Like they'd either pick up words they didn't know or they'd pick up some information that they didn't know. Because like some of the stuff about Egypt, I think, is like the mummification stuff is really, if you didn't know about that already, you'd be like, whoa, that's really weird. And you might like look into it more. How does that work? And
is that still a thing where kids go through phases where they're like obsessed with Greek mythology or obsessed with like ancient Egypt?
I think there's still, I see a lot of kids at the desk looking for, or parents looking for the kids. My kid's really into myths and my kid's really into this. Yeah, I still push the Delaires.
Those are still very fun.
They're so
reads.
great.
Yeah, I think they still
they hold up really well because they're beautiful and they're well done. And I think that the books that we do have on those topics still go out really well.
I mean, I definitely get asked by kids about those topics. Sometimes you don't know if it's for a project or not. Sometimes they're open about it, and sometimes you don't know if it's like this is what I want to learn everything about this week.
There's a lot of kids that are like into the I Survived books, which I think kind of like falls into that same realm.
Yeah,
of,
or the
loves history.
Hazardous Tales books.
Yeah.
I think those are also like they're historically accurate.
My line sister, her son's like 7 and he loves those I Survived books.
Yeah.
He'll come up and tell you, did you know about and I'm
cute.
like, yes, tell me more.
Yeah.
Let me tell you all the gory details.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's it for this episode of These Books Made Me. Join us next time when we'll discuss a book in which there is a cult led by a man named Father Peace. If you think you know which book we're tackling next, follow us on Instagram. We're at These Books Made Me, and drop a comment on our Guess Our Next Read post.